Fantastic. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Brilliant. So, hi, I'm Jasmine. I am currently the Cambridge Climate Change Charter Project Coordinator, and a key part of my role involves planning and carrying out communication around the Charter, connecting individuals, businesses and organisations with its key aims. So before joining as the Charter Coordinator last month, I was previously involved with Cambridge Carbon Footprint as their Communications Coordinator, and I mainly focused on the comms in the lead up to, we had a mass sign up day for the Charter on the World Environment Day. So alongside Cambridge Carbon Footprint, I also work for Cambridge Sustainable Food as their Communications and Media Coordinator. And both of these roles have involved planning and monitoring communications for these organisations and their channels, such as social media, websites, newsletters, and identifying like external communication opportunities to promote our work and the key messages, be that through press or local newsletters. So really, I think if I can do communications, most people can. I found most of my knowledge I've developed as I went along and encountered through different scenarios. So first up, why a comms plan? So it's a really important tool to help you streamline your messaging and make sure it meets your communications aims, to provide structure on who you want to reach and how. It will basically make things easier in the long run for you, having not only identified what your key aims will be, your messages, the audience and channels, but it also allows you to plan your communications over a certain period of time and get it all like straight and so you know what you're doing. And we'll be covering that throughout this presentation. So kind of a brief bit about the Cambridge Climate Change Charter. So it's a platform for individuals, businesses and organisations in Cambridge to learn about climate change, the climate emergency, consider potential actions to reduce their carbon emissions, advised by our online carbon footprint counter. And it gives people in the Cambridge community the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to positive climate action by signing the Charter. And it was initiated by the Cambridge City Council and it's hosted on our website. And so far, we have engaged with numerous individuals, businesses and organisations, with signatories included Nano Mexico, Adam Brooks, British Antarctic Survey, Cambridge Swing Dance, just to name a few. So as I previously stated, I have taken on the role as Cambridge Climate Change Charter Project Coordinator Officer, and that's to carry out the next leg of charter promotion in Cambridge community. So I'll primarily be focusing on increasing reach and sign-ups and supporting, empowering and celebrating positive action in Cambridge. And a large part of this work involves communication and engagement. So I've recently just written a new communication strategy. So I'll be talking about this throughout the presentation a bit, and it will also be in some worksheets later on for reference. So the first thing to establish is what are the aims of your communication plan? So there are a few key things to think about here. What do you want the outcomes of this communication period to be, and how do these aims support the goals of your project? I always say it's good to limit your plan to 1 or 2 aims max, because you want to avoid attempting to have too many messages and spreading yourself too thinly by talking about an awful lot. And I also think it's important to create aims, obviously, that reach quite far, but you realistically feel like you can achieve. And bear in mind, how are you going to measure the success of your communication aims at the end when you come to evaluate for like future activity? So if we take the Charter example, I established 2 main aims that would resonate with our work, choosing one as more of a primary where the main focus of the communications will be. So this is to increase reach and sign up of the Charter to Cambridge organisations of business and individuals, especially within hard to reach audiences who don't usually engage in sustainability initiatives. And this is through use of regular communications over a wide variety of channels, projects and organisations to establish the Charter as a recognisable brand for climate action in Cambridge. And then we have a secondary aim, which is more to engage with the local call to action for empowering and celebrating positive action within the Cambridge community. So once you have your aims, it's then important to identify the different audiences you might want to reach out to for your communication plans. And I think there's a few key things you want to think about here. So who do I need to reach in order to achieve my project's goals? And which audiences will benefit the most from my project? So how I tend to find to go about it is it helps to brainstorm all of the potential audiences, because there can be a lot, and then prioritise from there, identifying which ones you feel will reach your project's goals and aims the most. So For the next leg of the charter, we want to expand the messaging to resonate with both businesses and individuals across Cambridge. So these are quite two broad audience groups, so you might need to further reduce down which ones you want to prioritise engagement with. So for instance, if you're thinking about who can I find within hard to reach audiences, you might have young adults, families, climate aware but unsure how to act, or religious groups. So yeah, like I said, important to bear in mind further breakdown. So for instance, if you're looking at local businesses, is your targeted audience just businesses in generals, or are you looking at green businesses, well-known businesses, or like SMEs? And it's really important to identify the different audiences that you might communicate with, because then you can tailor your messaging, communication channels and approaches. And this is what we'll be covering in the next few slides. One top tip, I think, is to think about what are your audience pathways. So which audience and groups do you already have a good connection with that could potentially put you in connection with others? And how would you reach each audience? Does it require you to potentially go through a connected group or organisation that could put you in touch with the audience you're looking over? So this is just an example of a quick audience mind map I did to get an idea of where I'm going. So that can like just who could you get in touch with and how could you get in touch with them? Like what organisations could I go through? So now that you have your aims and your audiences, you then move on to what are the messages that I am going to convey to these audiences? And how will this support the aims of this communication plan? How am I going to tailor these to the audiences? So it's important to keep in mind they should be like targeted, precise, relevant, and consistent. Again, similar to aims, I would avoid spreading yourself too thinly and avoid having too many different messages involved, because it can be a lot to keep up with if you suddenly have about 10 different messages out there. So to help streamline your communications, it can be useful to think about maybe a hierarchy of messages. So what is that main message that you want to consistently convey each time when you're talking about your project? What do you want people to think about when that project is out there, and what best supports those aims? And again, you can start thinking about the general aims and messages that will support those aims, and then you can tailor those messages specifically to different audiences that you're trying to reach. So again, using the chart, for example, we're wanting the overarching theme to be Cambridge, a community of climate leaders. And then we've based our messages around this to support this theme. So for a general message, we do say the climate emergency is a real threat and is happening now, but we can all be part of building a sustainable future for all. And another one we've got is that as a community, we can all take positive action and be part of the solution by reducing our carbon footprints. And a third, just general message, this charter demonstrates the Cambridge community's commitment to taking action on climate change and is a platform that enables us to support one another in making a meaningful difference. And then as we go forward, we kind of can tailor those messages. So for a business, whilst the messages will be connected to it, it might be more relevant to say that you demonstrate your commitment to sustainability to the Cambridge community and other businesses through the charter, or that by signing the charter, it establishes you as a resilient business, helping to build your revenue and customer base, all while shrinking your footprint. And that businesses have a unique opportunity to act as climate leaders in the community for empowering and supporting customers, staff and stakeholders and other businesses. So whilst they connect with the first messages, they're a bit more tailored to that audiences. And you could do that, for instance, if you're talking about individuals, by saying support your friends and family through positive climate action, or join residents all over Cambridge who are already taking action from diverse backgrounds. So yeah, framing your messages to suit your audiences, that's a really key. And then finally, once you've done all that, you've got your channels. You have to have an idea of your audiences and messaging. It's time to think about how you're going to reach them. And different audiences can be reached through different channels. Think about both the internal channels that you could use. For instance, what do you have at your disposal? Your social media? Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a website that you could use to promote your work through? But also, what external channels and opportunities could you utilise? Is there local community newsletters that you could put your work through? Could you get in touch with the local press? Is there a local website that might like to feature your work? So there's kind of two avenues you can go down. So you can see some examples on your screen. So social media, website, newsletter, events. Could you hold a stall at a community event, or could you even host your own? So there's quite a lot of opportunities out there, and you might need to tailor that to your specific audiences. So for instance, if you're thinking about reaching younger adults, a lot of younger adults tend to use social media, particularly stuff like Instagram, which tends to have a more of a younger following. Or could you reach out maybe through the university? Is there a university fair that you could reach out through? Could you contact the student union? So, and maybe for like, if you're taking businesses, for example, could you maybe even reach out directly? Sometimes a direct approach could work. Or identify if there's a certain channel, such as a local business newsletter or magazine, that you could promote your work through. So there are many different channels that we're using for the charter, since we are trying to reach quite a range of audiences. So we're tailoring them and using them. And in your worksheet, there is more details on 3 of those channels that we're looking at. So websites, social media, and stores. So just an example for our social media that we're like moving forward on. We want to expand beyond our internal communication channels and get other people in the community talking about the charter, and like encourage them to use the word hashtag #CamClimateCharter. So trying to get them to promote the work. So it's just new approaches that we're doing. And I would say a big tip is don't be afraid to use your community connections to get the word of your project out. And it might actually help you identify new communication channels and opportunities that you weren't originally aware of. So kind of like using an audience pathway, you can use communication pathway. Sometimes even just using, if using social media, the right hashtag can make someone aware of your project, and then they could put suggestions of who you can get in contact with, or maybe if there's like a media opportunity that are looking for something that might connect your project, there's always those kind of opportunities out there. And then finally, when you're going forward your comms plan, you want to start thinking about what are your potential approach and your potential timeline. So strategize how and when you will implement your communication plans. And there's a few key questions that you could use to get you started, like how will you get your messages out through your chosen channels? Is there any key dates you want to time your communications around? What is the time period for your established aims? And although you might have an established plan, an approach or timeline, it's also important to remember it's okay to experiment and adapt your communications if needed. Especially if it's your first time like carrying out communications, you'll probably learn a lot about what does and doesn't work as you go along. So it's always good to take time to review your progress and plan to help make sure everything's on track. But you know, if you find something that works, keep on going with that and just have fun.